It was the morning of August 25th, 2017. A huge storm, Hurricane Harvey, was barreling toward Texas. Crystal McDowell sent a quick text to her ex-husband just to see if he had enough drinking water for the kids. Then she got in her black Mercedes and, I guess, drove toward his place. She had a full day planned, showing a house, running errands, but she never showed up. She never picked up her phone, and she never came home. As the rain started to really come down, Crystal seemed to just vanish into thin air. It would take hidden cameras, a child's quiet confession, and a gruesome discovery in the woods to finally reveal the truth. This is the real story of Crystal McDowell, and the moment everything changed. Crystal McDowell was born on October 26, 1979, in Baytown, Texas. Her early years were anything but a fairy tale. Raised by her parents, Pamela and Anthony, Crystal's childhood was, well, marked by a hell of a lot of instability. Both of them struggled with addiction and, just couldn't provide a stable home. And tragically, by the time she was 11, Crystal lost both her parents to apparent overdoses within months of each other. After their deaths, she was taken in by her grandmother, and later also raised by her uncle, Jeff Walters. But in spite of all the hardships, Crystal was known for her radiant smile, those incredible blue eyes, and a personality that could honestly just light up any room. She was so driven, upbeat, and adventurous. And she became a flight attendant, which, was a job that perfectly suited her spirit. For years, she traveled the country, experiencing new places and people. At some point on her journey, Crystal met Stephen Wayne McDowell, a guy 7 years older than her. Stephen was described as gentle and soft-spoken, believe it or not. Despite his massive build, and his charm, just really won Crystal over. After dating for a while, they married in April of 2007. Stephen had a daughter from a previous marriage. He worked as a shipping manager, but honestly, he struggled to hold down a steady job. So, as a result, Crystal became the main breadwinner, while she was killing it in her career. Stephen, I guess, remained professionally unstable, which created a serious imbalance in their relationship. The couple welcomed 2 children together, and from the outside, their home life seemed perfect. But behind closed doors, tension mounted, especially around Crystal's frequent travel. Stephen reportedly became more and more jealous, accusing her of having affairs during her flights, even though there was zero evidence of it. Friends said that Crystal cherished her family deeply and wanted stability above all else, especially given her rough upbringing. In 2016, Crystal made a huge decision. After 15 successful years as a flight attendant, she left the skies behind and joined her family's real estate business. This allowed her to spend more time with her children and, gave her a sense of permanence. Her uncle Jeff, who was so proud, welcomed her as part of the 3rd generation in their real estate legacy. Crystal, no joke, was a natural. Her charm, professionalism, and dedication made her a rising star in the local housing market. However, privately, she told close friends that the career change also served another purpose. She believed that staying local would, help her secure custody of her children if she and Stephen divorced. By February 2017, the marriage had reached its breaking point. Crystal filed for divorce, citing years of emotional stress, and on March 20th, she called 911 to report that Stephen had made some really frightening threats against her and their kids. The authorities treated it as a precaution rather than a criminal matter. At that point, there were no custody agreements in place, I guess meaning Stephen still had the legal right to be with his children. Officers tried to reach him, but their efforts were unsuccessful. A few days later, he returned the children, and Crystal decided not to press charges, choosing instead to focus on de-escalating tensions for the kids' sake. Those close to Crystal say she was doing everything she could to keep the divorce civil. Her top priority was always her children's well-being. Stephen's adult daughter was horrified by his behavior and asked him why he was acting out. He claimed to be enraged over, supposed affairs Crystal had during their marriage. Accusations that, for real, nobody in her circle believed. People who knew the couple agreed the relationship had been toxic for years. Even Stephen's daughter admitted that while she and Crystal got along great, the marriage had always been a total mess. Despite their differences, the divorce finalized in June 2017 appeared to be amicable, on the surface, at least. In fact, Crystal helped Stephen find and buy a new house while she worked on renovating her own. However, beneath the civil exterior, deeper issues lingered. Crystal often asked her family not to mention her plans or outings to Stephen, fearing he would just lose it. Even something as simple as spending time with a friend could trigger him. Although legally divorced, Stephen seemed unable or unwilling to accept reality. His social media activity revealed, holy shit, a disturbing pattern. Shortly after the divorce, he changed his profile photo to an image of a tombstone, then to one of Santa Muerte, before switching back to a picture of him and Crystal. His posts painted the picture of a happy, intact family. Meanwhile, Crystal continued to support Stephen emotionally, even checking in with him regularly. He kept telling her he was finally coming to terms with the separation and trying to get his life back on track. But holy hell, his actions told a completely different story. One of Crystal's aunts noticed that Stephen was constantly posting about bringing Crystal coffee in bed and pampering her, acting like their relationship was still totally intact. It was just unsettling. In what was probably a last-ditch effort to keep things civil for the kids, Crystal actually planned a cruise with Stephen and the children, but that closeness, it just completely blurred all the boundaries even further. And then, in August of 2017, something truly shifted. Crystal, who was now 37, met Paul, a local jeweler and, a fellow single parent. Paul was charismatic, driven, and shared Crystal's absolute love for travel and adventure. Their bond was instant, and for the first time in such a long while, Crystal felt genuinely, truly happy. Even though she told her family about Paul, she begged them to keep it quiet until she found the right moment to share it with Stephen. Despite being legally divorced, she still, seriously, feared his reaction. But that fear didn't stop her from, publicly expressing her joy. On August 23rd, she posted on social media that she had never been this happy and that her heart was so incredibly full of a joy she never thought possible. "God is so good," she wrote. Just 2 days later, on August 25th, Hurricane Harvey was just bearing down. Crystal woke up at Paul's house, preparing to face the storm and all her responsibilities for the day. At 7:01 a.m., she texted Stephen to ask if he had stocked up on clean water for the kids, and she told him she was heading to his house to shelter with them. She planned to visit a property afterward for a showing. Paul's security cameras captured the absolute last known images of Crystal that morning, first in the kitchen, then walking outside in heels and holding her phone as she got into her black Mercedes-Benz. She was never seen again. Later that day, Crystal's Uncle Jeff became incredibly concerned. They worked really closely in the real estate business and spoke all the time. He tried calling her multiple times to let her know that the showing had been canceled because of the storm. When she didn't answer, Jeff reached out to Stephen, who replied with a suspicious text, reportedly sent from Crystal's phone at 9:30 a.m., saying she planned to pick up the kids and head to Dallas. Oh God. Jeff immediately grew suspicious. Crystal never changed plans without letting him know, and her phone was her lifeline. Work, appointments, everything was managed through it. Something just did not add up at all. Fearing the absolute worst, he contacted the police to report her missing before noon that very same day. On August 26th, as floodwaters from Hurricane Harvey completely swept through Houston, Jeff and 2 family members confronted Stephen. Stephen claimed Crystal hadn't been to his house for over a week, but his daughter straight up told Jeff otherwise. She had hugged her mother just the day before. That same day, a sheriff's deputy visited Stephen's home for a welfare check. When authorities entered Stephen McDowell's home, they found not only Crystal's black dress in the washing machine, but also her purse and handbag, which, were clear, Undeniable signs she had recently been there. For her uncle Jeff, who had literally helped raise her, it was just undeniable. Stephen was absolutely involved in her disappearance, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Hurricane Harvey had utterly devastated the region. Many law enforcement officers, first responders, and even district officials were dealing with flooded homes and emergency rescues. As a result, the investigation just stalled before it could even begin. Desperate for answers, Jeff turned to the media, hoping to raise awareness and generate some leads, but his efforts were completely drowned out, literally, by round-the-clock storm coverage. With days passing and no progress, he hired a private investigator, just so frustrated by the deafening silence from local authorities. This move sparked a massive backlash. The local police chief and district attorney strongly objected to an outside investigator entering Crystal's home, arguing that critical evidence could be compromised or destroyed. Tensions between the McDowell family, law enforcement, and even local media in Houston just totally escalated. Refusing to back down, Jeff and Crystal's new partner, Paul, teamed up to raise a $15,000 reward for any credible information. They launched a social media campaign that finally drew serious public attention. But in the eyes of the investigators, suspicion fell not only on Stephen, but also on Jeff and Paul. Despite Jeff's relentless search for Crystal, law enforcement treated him with total skepticism. Whispers about his private life, namely his same-sex relationships, circulated in that conservative town of Baytown. Some believe those biases absolutely colored the way authorities viewed his involvement. The local police commander even dismissed Jeff's concerns on a national broadcast, calling him overly emotional and, what the hell, an obstacle to the case. Paul Hargrave wasn't spared either. After submitting to a polygraph with inconclusive results, his credibility was totally questioned. He made things worse in the investigators' eyes by sending surveillance footage from his home to news stations instead of turning it over directly to law enforcement. Paul defended his actions, saying he tried to provide the videos to the sheriff's office but felt completely, utterly ignored. So he took his case to the public to clear his name. And then, of course, there was Stephen. That all began to change on Tuesday, August 29th. As the floodwaters receded, a family friend spotted Crystal's black Mercedes-Benz parked outside a rundown motel, an area that had been flagged during the online campaign. The car doors were unlocked, and, believe it or not, the keys were still sitting in the console. Investigators believed it had been staged for theft, but due to the storm's impact, the flooded lot had made the car inaccessible. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses showed Crystal's car entering the motel lot at 6:37 a.m. on August 26th, the day she vanished. Just 5 hours later, Stephen was seen on camera at a nearby gas station. He didn't buy gas. Instead, he drove toward the motel, seemingly checking to see if the car remained untouched. Even more chilling, other surveillance captured a hooded figure matching Stephen's build, riding a bicycle through the rain near the motel that same morning. The clues were adding up, and for the first time, all eyes turned to Stephen, not as a grieving ex-husband, but as a potential suspect in a case that had stayed quiet for far too long. The investigation took a dramatic turn when surveillance footage from a Walmart located right across the highway from the motel where Crystal's car was found showed a man resembling Stephen McDowell purchasing a bicycle early on the purchasing morning of August 26th, 2017. He paid in cash, and the timing aligned perfectly with the sighting of a hooded figure on a bike near the scene. Despite this damning evidence, Stephen denied any involvement in Crystal's disappearance. Authorities, citing a lack of direct proof, allowed him to go home with his children. Crystal's family was outraged. Jeff, her uncle, reminded the district attorney that Crystal had previously filed a report saying Stephen had threatened to harm their children if she ever left him. To Jeff, the man's mental and emotional instability was undeniable. It wasn't until September 8th, almost 2 weeks after she vanished, that the district attorney finally intervened. The children were placed in protective custody, and Stephen was brought in for questioning. Yet even then, Stephen was still calling the shots. He asked to return home for one final night, to get things in order, and promised to confess the next morning. Jeff and other loved ones were absolutely furious. They believed this unsupervised time could give Stephen an opportunity to take his own life and escape justice. But on September 9th, 2017, Stephen actually kept his word. He returned to the station and confessed. He told investigators that during a heated argument, Crystal informed him she was taking her new boyfriend, Paul, on an upcoming family trip, and not him. She had just returned from spending time with Paul, which completely enraged Stephen. As their children slept upstairs, he attacked her from behind and strangled her to death. After the murder, Stephen wrapped her body in a blanket, put it in the trunk of his car, and before sunrise, drove to a wooded area near his home where he disposed of her remains. Even with the confession, Stephen refused to disclose the location of the body unless prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty. Given the damage caused by Hurricane Harvey and the time that had passed, authorities feared the body would be impossible to locate without his help. They agreed to the deal. Later that day, Stephen led authorities to a remote, overgrown area. Crystal's remains were found in an advanced state of decomposition. Stephen McDowell, then 44, was charged with first-degree murder. Bail was set at $500,000, which, he was unable to pay. Beyond the jealousy and rage, the case revealed a more sobering truth. Without Crystal, Stephen had no way of financially supporting himself or his children. Justice, however, moved slowly. The trial didn't begin until June 2019. During that time, Stephen showed no remorse. In court, he tried to portray himself as a broken man, claiming he acted in a sudden fit of passion, a legal strategy in Texas that, if accepted, could drastically reduce his sentence. He even alleged that Crystal's death resulted from a consensual encounter gone wrong. But the prosecution completely dismantled this narrative, emphasizing the long emotional abuse and control he had exerted throughout their relationship. Stephen's legal team tried to smear Crystal's reputation, introducing unverified texts and claims of infidelity. But those closest to her stood firm. They painted a very different picture. Crystal was vibrant, caring, and deeply committed to her children. They testified about the dysfunction and manipulation she endured for years. One of the most heartbreaking moments during the trial came when Mandy Avalos, Crystal's lifelong friend and guardian of her children, took the stand and shared something devastating. In December 2017, Maui, then just 5 years old, confided in Mandy that she was ready to reveal her secret. Mandy had no idea what to expect. Gently encouraging the girl to speak, she listened in shock, as Maui described, waking up the morning her mother vanished. She recalled hearing her parents fighting. She wandered past the bathroom and into the bedroom. There, she saw Stephen push Crystal onto the bed and place his hands over her nose and mouth. Maui stood at the edge of the bed as her mother looked at her until her eyes stopped moving. Then Stephen turned to his daughter, told her to go upstairs, and warned her never to speak about what she saw. Mandy immediately alerted authorities. Maui was placed into trauma counseling, but the emotional wounds ran deep. Another key witness for the prosecution was Melissa Cherry, Crystal's cousin and close friend. Melissa recalled helping Crystal move out of the home when things with Stephen became unbearable, and then helping her move back in when Stephen threatened to end his life if she didn't return. Cherry also testified that after the divorce, Stephen continued to emotionally manipulate Crystal, even starving himself to make her feel responsible for his well-being. The day after Crystal went missing, Melissa and Jeff visited Stephen's home. He was pacing nervously, trembling, and crying. And Maui, the little girl, told them she had seen her mom the day before, then pointed to a black dress in a closet and said, "The bad spirits took her." The scene was just chilling. Melissa and Jeff immediately called the police from outside the home, begging them to remove Stephen from the children's lives, but their pleas were completely ignored. Melissa also testified about the family cruise Stephen had proposed, a last-ditch effort, honestly, to stage some kind of peaceful goodbye. Crystal reluctantly agreed, but made it absolutely clear: no threats, no manipulation, no harm. As the trip neared, another argument, this time over money, convinced her to cancel. She realized Stephen wasn't trying to say goodbye. He just wanted to win her back. Then came one of the most damning testimonies. An inmate who had shared a cell with Stephen revealed that Stephen had confessed in detail to killing Crystal. The motive? a text message from another man. The inmate recalled Stephen saying he used zip ties to bind Crystal's hands after she died, a detail only the forensic team had previously confirmed. Texas Department of Public Safety officials confirmed other pieces of Stephen's confession. He told them Crystal had arrived early on the morning of August 25, 2017. They fought. She told him she never truly loved him and that he just needed to move on. In a rage, he strangled her in the bedroom. The 5-day trial ended swiftly. In just 3.5 hours, the jury found Stephen McDowell guilty of first-degree murder. On September 10, 2019, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He must serve at least 25 before being eligible for parole, making his potential release date 2042. Crystal's family was absolutely devastated by what they saw as a lenient sentence. Her uncle Jeff shouted in court that Stephen deserved worse. Others were so frustrated, believing a life sentence or even the death penalty should have been on the table. But those options had been taken off due to the deal Stephen struck in exchange for revealing where he had hidden Crystal's body. The family's biggest concern, however, wasn't just the length of the sentence, it was the emotional toll on the children. Despite being surrounded by love, Maui and Madden had suffered an unimaginable loss. Crystal had always centered her life around them, and now they were left navigating trauma most adults couldn't even bear. By 2020, Mandy Avalos, who had taken in the children immediately after Crystal's murder, was taking steps to legally adopt them. Some sources describe Mandy as Crystal's childhood best friend, while others claimed they had once been romantic partners. Regardless of their past, Mandy remained Crystal's most trusted person, and her devotion to the children was absolutely unwavering. Now that you've heard the full story, we want to know your thoughts. Do you think Stephen McDowell received the justice he deserved? Share your opinion in the comments. We're reading them all.